What's up, guys? So I got a good question from my buddy Andre. He sent me a message and said that about 9 years ago he had a herniated disc and said that he never had surgery because it was kind of unpredictable. And since that time, he said it's improved and that he doesn't really feel much out of his neck at this point. Said that he still does lots of exercises and he does weight training regularly, so he has no issues out of it whatsoever, pretty much. And he said that he wants to get into Brazilian Jiu-jitsu. He said he's been interested in it forever and is wanting to try it out, and was wondering if I had any tips on whether or not he should, and if he does get into it, how to avoid injury. So Andre, first, thanks for the question, brother. I do appreciate it. And the first piece of advice I'm going to give you is something that most of us never do. Like all the little disclaimers on almost everything say, consult with your doctor before you do this. And none of us really do, right? We just go ahead, well, screw it, we'll do it. And if something hurts, then we'll talk to the doctor. The first thing I would say is if you do have a potential neck injury, like just there, talk with your doctor, man, because that's not something to mess around with, right? That's your neck. There's a lot of things that you can kind of get by on, like muscle, like pulls and stuff like that. And a neck injury, something with your spine, that's not one of them. So I would check with your doctor first. Aside from that, if you do get the okay, or you do decide to start training regardless, the first thing that I would do is talk with your instructor when you go into the gym and ask them, say, listen, I want to start training jiu-jitsu, and ask them if you can basically skip out on rolling for at least a month. Now, since you're new to jiu-jitsu, it may not seem like a big deal, but rolling is like the dessert of jiu-jitsu, right? It's the funnest part. The funnest, that's not even a word, is it? It's the most fun part of jiu-jitsu. When you're doing technique, when you're flowing, doing the drills, that's not bad, that's fun, right? But the rolling, right? That's where you get to you put your stuff in live, live situations, and where you get that feedback, right? Like, did this work? Did this not work? And you get the reward. Boom, I hit my move, right? I hit it, yes. And you're exhausted, and you get that same sort of endorphin rush that you get after a hard lift or a hard run, and it's the most fun part. So you're gonna have to skip out on that for a little bit. And the reason I say this is because typically the rolling is where you accumulate the most amount of damage. And a lot of times in the beginning, you accumulate a lot of damage because you don't really know what you're doing. You're very stiff. And so you want to try to give your body time to at least acclimate to some degree before you start putting it out on the line and putting it into that combat situation. So first thing I would say is talk to your instructor that you eventually, if you go to a gym eventually, talk to them and say, hey, I have a potential, or I have a previous neck injury. Could I just do technique and just come to the classes and kind of just take it all in for a month and then progress to the rolling afterwards? Now, following that, what I would do is, again, you have to find an instructor that's okay with this, because some of them aren't. Some of them are like, it's my way or the highway, so you have to find someone that is cool with this kind of stuff, right? The next thing I would say is that when you do progress to rolling, ask them if it is okay for you to start and do situational style rolling. So something that I do with all my fundamental classes, and I think this is really important, is the rolling is very situational. It's topical, right? It's very much on that, like whatever our topic was for that day, whatever our situation was for that day, that's where we roll from. And the reason I do this is because when you're a white belt or when you're brand new, you take a lot of damage when you get out of the places where you know where things are, right? Like where you know what's going on. So when you get out of the situations that you've been working on, you're kind of at a loss, and you twist and turn in the wrong ways because you have nothing you have no idea where to go from there. So what I would say is, when you do decide to roll, make sure your instructor's okay with this. Ask him, say, listen, man, can I just do the situation that we worked on today? Or talk to your partner that you end up rolling with and say, hey, listen, we did mount escapes today. Can I just work on my mount escapes and work from there? And that's gonna help prevent injury, because you're at least gonna know where to go from there, instead of just let's see what happens and pushing and pulling out of weird spots. And again, you're gonna have to do that over time, but at least you can sort of minimize the risk early on. The last piece of advice that I'm gonna give to you, and this is to anybody that's listening, is when injuries are involved, most people are their own worst enemy, right? And what I mean by this is, like, for instance, me, when I used to get injured, I used to have this mentality of no pain, no gain. So I would be injured, and instead of trying to find a way to work around it, or just taking off and just resting completely for a little bit and giving my body time to rest and listening to what my body's telling me, I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna keep going. And then the injury progressed or got worse or just didn't heal, right? It nagged and nagged and nagged and it nagged and never went away. So what I would say to you is that I looked at your pictures, man. You're a pretty big guy, and so I'm sure that when you get on the mat, you're gonna probably have a competitive sort of nature to you anyway. Just don't be overly competitive. It's sort of the curse of many people, including myself as a white belt. You just get really competitive, and that competitive nature sort of fuels that ego-driven idea that I can't lose. And you have to be ready to lose a little bit, because again, it's going to happen. And if you fight out of some of those positions, like someone gets a guillotine choke or someone gets like behind your neck, if they're starting to pull on something, you need to go, oh, tap, 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 right? And sort of on a side note, anything that involves the neck, like pulling the neck down or darces or guillotine chokes, rear naked chokes, anything that is grabbing your neck, I would be very cautious with it. And if someone gets a good grip on it, regardless of whether or not it is actually choking you or doing it effective, just go ahead and tap. Like if they get a guillotine choke and they're pulling back, even if it's not quite choking you, just go and tap right now, just for the time being. This way you can sort of not get hurt in the beginning, and then eventually you can kind of figure out, your limits and where you can push it and where you can't push it. So kind of rambled on there towards the end, brother, but I hope that that information helps. And if you're watching this and you have a neck injury of some sort, I hope this video was helpful to you. And if you guys have any questions, shoot them over to me. And that's it. Take it easy, guys. Right? And you'll start to experience this really early on in jiu-jitsu, because you'll start to like favor certain techniques and you'll start to do things and you won't think about it. You'll just sort of do it.